In part 1 of our deck build series, we covered building the deck around a pre-existing structure. If you haven't already checked that video out, head over to our channel and be sure to subscribe so you can stay updated on the status of our massive home remodeling project. In this video, we're going to cover how we installed a cable railing system, the sort of icing on the cake if in our case the cake is the deck and the icing the cable railing system. These are the parts necessary to get started. This is our stainless steel wire. It's from a company called DN-Mate that we found on Amazon. It's 1/8 of an inch thick and made of marine grade stainless steel, so it should resist corrosion out in the elements. DN-Mate sells a bunch of sleeves and washers. You can really go to town customizing how this thing is going to look, but cost-wise it adds up quickly. So we only went with sleeves and washers where we felt it was necessary. These are angled sleeves that we used for the stairs and corner posts where the cable has to effectively make a 90-degree turn. We thought at the time it was necessary to prevent the cable from potentially damaging the wood as it rubbed up against it at these turns, but I think that was just our anxiety talking. They also sell sleeves for the straight runs if you're into that sort of thing. These are washers that go at the bottom and top of the stairs where the turnbuckle will be sticking out at a weird angle, designed to fill in that gap. These are the turnbuckles, the star of the show. The end cap, seen here, gets crimped onto the start of a run, and the piece that actually does the turning, seen here, comes in two parts. The inner sleeve gets crimped onto the end of a row and then screwed into the outer sleeve. The threading on the inner sleeve gives you enough space to tighten the row of cable as much as needed. The company calls this an invisible cable railing system because the hardware that tightens the cable is hidden inside the post. There are much cheaper options with bulkier turnbuckles that leave the tightening mechanism exposed, but the clean lines that this thing creates helps make the whole railing system disappear visually, which really was the whole reason we decided to go with this type of deck rail in the first place, so it seemed worth the extra expense. This is a drill guide that we didn't end up using much, but it did come in handy for the holes on the stair posts. The first step in assembling is to drill holes through the deck posts that the cable will run through. You want to make sure the holes are all aligned to keep the cable rails looking nice and straight, so I started by making a very crude template using some scrap wood, making sure to rip it down to the exact width of the posts to ensure that there was no room for error when placing the holes. We then clamped the template to the post, resting the bottom of the template on the top edge of each post base to keep the holes aligned. Obviously, it would have been a better idea to make this template out of metal or maybe some solid acrylic, but I didn't have time to be fancy about it. Instead, I made sure to just start the holes with the template, then remove it before drilling into the post any further to avoid potentially opening up the holes of the template over time. We tried using the drill guide at first to drill the holes, but it was taking too much time to align it properly, so after a few attempts, we shifted over to just eyeballing it. For the corner post, I just cut a block with a 45-degree angle marked on the top that I could use as a reference to make sure I was driving the drill bit in at the correct angle. Once I started it at the right angle, I was able to continue the hole by just lightly guiding the bit through. It will follow the angle you started as long as you don't force it in. I should note that with all of these holes, we always drilled only halfway through on each side. This prevents tear out, but also helps to ensure that the holes stay aligned on either side of the post. You can obviously drill all the way through the post if your bit is long enough, but there's room for error if your bit travels enough that might throw off where the exit hole lands and make your rows of cable uneven looking. Here's where the drill guide came in handy. It was too hard to eyeball the angle at the stairs, so the guide did help us make sure we were keeping the angle the same on either side. Where our rows ended at the top of the stairs, I used a Forstner bit to widen the start of each hole so that the head of the end terminal would sit flush with the post. In theory, this sounded like a great idea, but there was just too much room for error, and I ended up with some of the turnbuckles sitting further in than others. If I could do it again, I would not do this, and instead just let the head of the turnbuckle stick out the way it was intended to. Once all your holes are drilled, you're ready to start running some cables. It's as easy as threading a needle. To attach the ends of the turnbuckles to the cable, you'll need a wire crimping tool. The Harbor Freight Special comes with a bunch of adapters to fit different sizes of wires, so you'll need to play around to see which works best. You'll start on one end of the first row by attaching the end cap to the wire. Just slide it in and crimp it. Turns out it's harder to use this thing than we thought. Once the end cap is attached, just slide it in through the hole. Now it's time for the turnbuckle, which comes in two parts. The inner sleeve has a threaded end that screws into the outer sleeve. The inner bit gets attached to the cable with the crimping tool and passed through the last post in the row. Then the outer sleeve gets inserted on the other end and screwed into the inner sleeve. I should note we found it helpful to use pliers to lightly hold down the cable while we tightened the turnbuckle to prevent it from spinning with the drill, but be gentle so you don't end up unraveling the cable. These sexy stainless steel washers came into action at the bottom of the stairs.